Hey folks, welcome back to the shop. We finally did it. We finally got the project bike that you and I are going to fix up and give away to one of our subscribers. Have you ever been to a campfire and people are roasting marshmallows? Ever notice how some people like their marshmallows just barely roasted at all, and then you have some fools that just burn their marshmallows off the stick? Check this out. Talk about your projects. This is the definition. A customer of mine found this bike when he was going to pick up a hot tub, laying behind the hot tub in the weeds, and this bike had been burned to the ground. I mean, so much that even the tires are just burned off. The front one's gone, the back one's crusty. This is going to be our first, I guess what I call a subscribers build, where you and I build this and then I give this away to one of our subscribers. So as far as a will it run again video, buddy, we got our hands full with this. Let me get you peepers in here and show you what all is going on. I mean, you think this is like weeds? No, this is wiring. So let's get in here, see how bad the damage is. It looks like when it burned, they just let her burn. It's bad, really bad. What I'm going to do is grab a cup of coffee, sit down, study on this for a minute, and decide what I'm going to do with it. Well, while I was chewing on my coffee and looking this over and walking around it and pondering on it, I think what's going to be best is this. I don't have a title for it. I do have a bill of sale. Yes, I am a shop. I can go through the process of getting a title, but here's the problem. If we get this back street legal, say we were to totally restore this, it's a 1993 750 GSX-F. It's what you call a Katana. I think this actually is a year before the Katana started, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a Katana, what you call a Katana platform today. So if we were to go through the process of restoring this, we would have more money in it, really, than you'd want in it, than it'd be worth. So I was thinking, what can we do with this? If the motor's good and it runs, what can we build? So I think I have decided that we are going to build a dirt flat track race bike. So if you're into flat track racing and you're one of our subscribers, there's a good chance this might come home with you if we can get it running. So let me get you in here. Let's look around, walk around this, see what we're working with. I mean, you should have saw me trying to get this on the lift. This doesn't turn at all. The front forks blew out with the heat. It melted things so bad. I'm actually surprised that it looks as good as it does, considering what I see is burnt all the way through. So there's a lot you and I are going to do. The main thing is let's focus on this motor and see if we can see if it's locked up. I worry about it, being laid out. I think it was laid out for a couple of years in the weather. There was nothing over the intakes here. Carbs are gone. Boots are just melted, crispy off. So I'm not sure the condition of the motor. All right, so good news is we do have a key. Of course, it's locked up. Will not turn. Already been bent. That's gone. This thing melted to the ground. Like I said, guys, this isn't weeds. It looks like a weed. No, that's wire. All the wire. It melted. The coils are melted. The boots just broke off, melted. The plugs, luckily, are still in it. That's good news for us. So the only concern with water getting in is these boots were not sealed up. I mean, if they'd have just stuck rags in it, that would have, done wonders. Of course, the oil lines all melted off. What's surprising is like the starter wire still has its loom on it. Maybe they tried to put it out with some water and that saved that wire. Not sure. There's, see, some of the loom still left. But man, she got a little toasty there. Got so hot that it burned the glass out of the front brake reservoir. Of course, the chain, solid, rusted, and movable. The shock does not work, of course. The oil cooler is still there, and the lines are not damaged, just a little corrosion. So we might just be able to soft line there to there. Still has the exhaust headers on it, so that's good news for us. So I think this motor might be savable. We'll soon find out. Now there is a little bit of weeds there, but all this right here is wire. Well, it got so hot it just blew the fluid out the seals. So this is what we have to work with. But as far as flat track racing, we have a motor. We have a solid frame. I looked over the frame. It didn't burn through any of the frame. I think that'll clean up fine. So motor, frame, handlebars. We'll do some new forks. We will do some new rubber. Take the front brakes off. And put a tank, seat, some metal work with some numbers, and some wiring and battery. Man, we're good to go. We will be good to go. Of course, carbs. Now these came with 4 inline carbs, which are always a bear to work on, to sync up, just to keep running good. The Katana carbs are, just, to me, junk, and they always seem to give you trouble. And so I might go with 4 into 1 and run a single carb with an air cone on it, especially if we're going to dirt track it. We'll see how that works. I think that might work better. A whole lot easier to work on if you got to work on your carb. You're just working on 1, not 4. So where do we start? Well, I think what I'm going to do and where we'll start is getting these calipers off, getting the chain off, and getting this caliper off so that we can at least move the bike and roll the bike if we need to get it off the lift to work on others. I want to create a playlist for this as we build it, and so you'll have that there. Now we won't need any of this up here. We can remove all of that. It had one gauge that survived. I might try to clean it up or just bust the glass out and see what gauge that was. Kind of curious. I know they had more gauges than that. And once we can get it rolling, then we'll start looking at the motor. We'll see what the oil looks like. We'll pull the plugs. We'll drop some mystery oil, diesel fuel down in the cylinders and let them set before we ever try to turn this motor. That'll give us a good idea of, you know, what's inside here. Haven't even opened this up yet. Has it got a dipstick on it? No, a side glass. Is the glass still in there? Oh, yes, it is. And as you can see, there's no oil in there at all. Oh, man. Guys, look how clean that is in there. Oh, look how clean that is. Oh, it still smells like fresh oil. Are you kidding me? Oh, did we look out? Oh, man. Okay, so what's invested in this so far? Yeah, 50 bucks. That's what I got this for. And it's a customer, so we really actually bartered some labor. So, really, I mean, it's free to me. We'll have to put some money into it, but I think this is going to make an awesome flat track race bike. Well, let's get started. So because this thing got hotter than a one-chip challenge, I'm going to spray every bolt down. I wish I just had a bathtub of WD-40 just set this down in. Let it sit there for a good 2 weeks. I'm going to spray everything down that we're going to strip down pretty much the whole bike, all the nuts and bolts, before I even try to turn one. Where it got hot, and then hot brings the rust and accelerates it, these are going to be, but every single bolt on here is going to give us a headache, probably. I'm hoping not. But I'm just going to go through here, spray everything down that we need to spray down before we start wrenching. And then we'll start on the front and get those front calipers off, get this rear caliper off, cut the chain off, and see if this is in neutral. You know, since it might still be in gear, I don't know, the chain's all rusted up. Since it looks so good in that clutch pack, man, it looks so clean, looks like a brand new motor inside. I'm hoping we can at least shift it and get it in neutral and see if the sprocket will turn, and maybe even see how our gears are before we ever crank it up. So let's get the spraying. Well, now that everything's slicker than a new pair of shoes, we can go ahead and start cranking on some bolts. At least it smells better. The WD-40 smells better than what was on there. Come on now. You know, these calipers, they don't look that bad at all. Surprised. All right, calipers are off, and again, Doesn't look like they're in that bad a shape if somebody's, you know, needing rebuild parts. The rotor actually looks pretty good. Looks like it didn't really burn much back here. If you can tell, you can see the burn come to here and then stopped. So I don't know if they were able to put it out or what, but it didn't keep burning past this point. Of course, it burned enough to pop the tire, but it didn't burn any past this. What's weird to me is that this whole tire, all the way around, is burned. Like, you know, this didn't burn, but this back here is burned. So I don't know if they were driving through Hades or what, but that's what we got. Let's get the chain off. Then we're done with making it halfway movable. I'm not worried about the non-turning of the forks yet. I sprayed some lube on that and hoping that'll kind of free up enough we can turn it. But let's go ahead and zip this chain off real quick. That rain coming in sounds so peaceful. Well, I have to say that's the first time I've cut a chain and it stayed where it was. Yikes. Oh my goodness. I thought I might be able to just pull the chain out, but I don't think, oh, yeah, I don't think it's gonna bend enough to go around that front sprocket. Up here in the front's not as rusty. Let me cut another section off and see if we can run it out the back. Because the sprocket is moving on us. Hey, we got it. Awesome. Awesome. Well, we do know now that it is indeed in neutral. Once I pull this cover off, which I'm not going to do right now, there's several things you got to take off, then the sprocket will be there and we'll be able to see if we can shift and just kind of shift the transmission. But let's go ahead, drop the oil in this, see what that looks like, see if we can pull some plugs. Hopefully they didn't get too hot and seized in there. If not, we'll have to pull the valve cover off and see if we can get to them a little better. But see what we got inside the motor a little bit better by looking at the oil and the plugs. All right, we're going to drop this oil now. Let me give you a little bit of let's learn on it for a minute. If you want to check what's in your oil, don't use a black oil drain can. Cut something up that you can see the oil for what the color is. So I save these old bottles and cut them up, even old coolant jugs, cut them up, and I do that so that I can see what the color is. If it goes in a black catch pan, you can't really see what's inside that oil because the black hides it. So this way I can see if there's any water in it, there's not going to be any coolant in it because this is an air-cooled or oil-cooled bike. But we can see if there's any water from being left outside in it. So just a little tip there. Now have you a black jug sitting close because these little jugs might not hold all the oil. But I don't suspect there's much oil in here at all. All right, moment of truth. We'll start with this one. Alright, so as you can see, there is quite a bit of water that is in that. This probably came down from the intakes being open. So if this does turn over freely and has good compression, we definitely need to flush it a couple times with fresh oil. So there you can see how milky that is. It's not as bad as what I was expecting. So we'll let that drip while we work on the plugs, because I want all that out as much as it'll come out, all that sludge. But so far, not too bad. So I did get really lucky and was able to get the plug boots out. All the plug boots were in except cylinder number 2. Alright, we're going to try to clean around some of these plugs before we pull any of them. They're packed full of stuff. So we're going to kind of dig out the trash that I see down in there. I'll just do this with a rag and paper towels. Oh yeah. I actually wish I'd done this before I sprayed the WD-40 in there, so that I could have took an air hose and just blowed a lot of this trash out. I don't have a pick that's long enough to go down there and get it. So let's get an air hose in there and see if we can blow it out. Well, it was coming a monsoon when I was trying to take the plugs out. They didn't give me any trouble. They were pretty just debris up. But once I put the socket in there and gave it just a little love tap, it seated around it and I was able to get them out. So I want to show you something on these plugs. I think this is great news. We'll start with number 4 over here, 4, 3, 2, 1. So number 4 cylinder, if you're sitting on your bike on the right side, look at this plug. This plug looks great. There's no rust, there's no water, there's no rust on the threads. Plug number 3 is dry. Carbon, but again, nothing on the threads. Now plug number 2 does show a little bit of water, but not bad at all. It does show a little bit of rust, more than 3 and 4. And then number 1 is quite wet. So you can tell that this was setting on the left side, laying down on the left side of the bike. All the oil ran to that side and none was up on top. But as far as plug wise, guys, I'm very happy. I think we're going to have a running motor. So now that we got the plugs out, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take just any kind of just cheap oil. Doesn't even matter what weight it is. I'm just going to pour down a little bit in the holes, in each holes, WD-40 as well. And I'm just going to let those soak for a moment, probably about an hour, and then we'll come back and take the cover off and crank the bike by a ratchet and see how it feels. While the cylinders have been soaking down, I went ahead and got all this wire and stuff disconnected, bundled up, and out of the way. What surprises me is there's still cloth coverings on these wires. Now the plastic inside or rubber or whatever has melted off, but these things, man, they survived. Are these like fireproof or something? Here's the starter wire. It's burned off there, but no rust. I mean, it looks like whatever this stuff is, because look, the wire inside, the rubber is burned up, but this cloth cover is still intact. And of course the cloth cover wasn't on the ground wire. It's nothing but just metal wire. Everything burned off that. So clack it down in the comments. Let me know what this material is, because man, I want to make some britches out of it. Still coming down pretty good out there. Sounds good on this metal roof. All right, let's take this cover off. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh yeah. Guys, this doesn't look that bad at all. Oh, so far so good. This is wonderful. We did get this freed up, so this shifts now. So I'm taking my right hand and turning sprocket. I can go down in first. I can come back up to neutral. Second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Go back down. And back in neutral. So now we know for sure we are in neutral. Now we can start working on turning that crank back and forth and seeing if she'll break free. All right, on the cover, I've cleaned out all the heads on the bolts. And now I will just, oh man, break these free and then go back with the gun. This is the end that was in the dirt, I believe, so. These were really, really dirtied up. I'll come back to that one. And that one. There we go. Got them all broke free, but this one, I told you all these bolts were going to give us trouble, and that's exactly what's happening with this one. All right, so this Allen head here, which is number 5, is rounded off. All right, what I want to do here is make a slit across the top like a flathead, and then we can chisel it counterclockwise. That's the plan. Now we'll see if we can get in there and chisel that. I've got a big flat head. I guess I could try to get in there, but I didn't want to get into the case. So let's see if this will break it up. I think she turned a little for us. That is wonderful. Alright, so we'll definitely replace that one. The other ones are loose. We can go ahead and zip them out with our gun. I know it doesn't have much oil in it now, but it could Still leak. Ooh, that's some water. Oh. Well, again, I am very, very happy. There was some sludge, but you know what, guys? It's not like rusty. If you get a bike that's been sitting for a long, long time, you start stripping it down and all this is rusted and all that's rusted and all that's rusted, you kind of know what you're getting into in the heads and the base. But with this, I've not seen a bit of rust on the inside of this motor yet. So now is the moment of truth. We know we're in neutral. Nothing left to do, guys, but start turning. Here we go. Take this out just in case it falls. So she is locked up. Could be pistons, could be a stuck valve open, just not sure. Hopefully with soaking and oil and just letting those rings get a little wet. Let's let her soak some more and get back to it. Well, I went ahead and took the exhaust off. That didn't give me much trouble at all. But in the process of taking the exhaust off, I think I have found our stuck, what's going to be our stuck cylinder, which actually, oh, that's the wrong one. There we go. Which actually is cylinder number 1. This is the side that laid on the ground. And as you can see, that's rust from water mixing in with the oil. As you go on in cylinders, cylinder 2 looks better. A little bit of water crystallites. Cylinder 3 exhaust looking a little better. And with cylinder 4 exhaust looking about the same. If I guess a stuck piston, that's the one I'm guessing, number 1. So in doing this, what we're going to do now is pull the valve cover off and take the head off. That way I can see exactly where that piston is, because I can pretty much guarantee you that piston is locked up tighter than something, I don't know, locked tight. Okay, so here's the intake cam and the lobes. Let me spin this around here to show you. You say, well, the lobes are rusty. Well, when you run your finger across it, you realize very quickly that no, it's not pitted. All that really is just surface rust that rubs off with your finger. So I'm almost certain once we clean this up, that these are going to be okay. All of the lobes look good and smooth once we clean all of that off. However, this lobe here, look at that. That doesn't look too good. So I would say that this was knocking, maybe tapping, maybe not knocking, maybe tapping when it was running. So I don't know, maybe they were kind of working on it, trying to diagnose it when it caught fire. I'm not sure, but that is pretty bad on the intake. If we were to try, by feeling this, if we were to try to smooth this out, we would really be out of spec on that. And of course, when you get a cam lobe that looks like that, you're going to find the issue to be with that as well. Look at that. That's where the lobe runs. It rides on this, pushes the valve springs down and opens the valve. So that is very sharp to the finger on the corners. Rutted very bad. Just to give you an example of a normal one. Nice and smooth and shiny. No rough edges. And they all look good. So when you replace the cam due to a lobe being torn up, you also got to replace what it rides on as well. I don't know what these are called. Tappet? No, not tappets. I don't know. Clack it down in the comments. Let me know what this little thing is. Now, of course, we can adjust, but I don't want to put a new or good used cam in here and it just tear that lobe up. Now on the exhaust cam, they look pretty good. Again, this right here will just rub off. It's not that bad at all. It's not pitted that I can see. It's just dirty. Almost like, I guess you'd say flash rust. All the teeth still look good in it. And nothing's damaged on these lobes at all. They're nice and smooth. So I'm glad that we tore it down to this point so that I could see the chain tensioner, and the gear all look good. So what we're going to do next is go ahead and pull the head bolts off. There's a sequence and untightening them, and then of course a sequence to torque them down. So I'll pull the spec up on that, and then we'll start wrenching. I believe with these frames, you don't have to drop the motor, and that's good. Now I'm going to pull the motor anyway so that we can take the frame off to powder coating and do some cleanup on the outside of this motor. So I'm going to pull the motor off anyway, but however, to get this head off and then to break free any pistons, we definitely want to leave the motor in the frame if we can. So that way the motor's not turning on a desk or a table while we're trying to, kind of give some pressure on it. So let's get these head bolts off, slide the head off, and then that will really tell us what our problem is, why it's locked up. Any bets? Get in the comments. My bet, cylinder number 1 by the look of the exhaust. Maybe, in hindsight, we should have took the exhaust off first and looked up in there, and that would have told us what our issue is. Now, before you go and take these head bolts off, a lot of people forget this. There is, right here, let me get out of the light. Right here, there's a 10mm nut or bolt. Take that out. A lot of people forget this. Right here is where the head ends. The gasket runs here. There's the gasket. So the head ends here. There's a 10mm bolt right here that holds the base to the jugs to the head. A lot of people forget this, and when you untorque those head bolts and you forget this, you could break this right here. So take this out, then we'll be ready to take the head bolts off. So the cam chain tensioner just comes out with 2 5mm hex heads, and then this whole assembly slides out. But again, look guys, it looks, like we're working on a normal bike, not one that's been burnt and in the woods for 3 years. Now the diagram in the book doesn't tell you the orientation of the motor, if this is the front or this is the back. But you can tell by these bolt holes right here that goes in spark plugs 2 and 3. So it would look like, well, how do I know what's the front? You can tell by those 4 bolt holes. So if we remove this, now we can see that our bolt holes are indeed toward the back of the bike. See that? So that would mean then that this is the front of the bike and this is the back. So this is going to be the orientation of how we remove the bolts. And we're going to go in sequence. Now we're not going to start with number 1 because we're loosening them. This is the tighten sequence. You would start at 1. So we're going to start with the highest number, which is number 12. And number 12 is back here. And we're only going to give this about a quarter turn to loosen. Okay. Then we'll go to number 11, which is down here. Yeah, you're going to be shaky with me because you're up on the lift. Okay. Then we're going to go to 10. Oh, don't go nowhere on me. All right, I put you down on the ground because you were awful shaky up on the lift, and that's just weird. Now we're going to do we did 12, 11, 10, 9. Okay. 8 is here. 7 is here. Get a little bit longer bar because these things are on here tight. There we go. Now 6 is here. 5 is here. 4 is here. 3. 2. You're getting a little looser now. And 1 is here. Yeah. All right. Start the process all over again. Move these back out of the way. All right, we'll start with 12. Now they're coming off a whole lot easier. 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5 is here. Did I forget? Did I skip 5? Ooh. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, back again. 12, that's completely loose. 11, it's completely loose. 10, that's now loose. 9, where's my 8? 8, completely loose. 7, completely loose. 6, completely loose. 5. Now loose. 4. Now loose. 3, 2, 1. All right. Now that they're all loose and there's no pressure on the heads by the head bolts anymore, we can just take these nuts out. Be careful around you're dropping anything, because there is a nut and a washer that is on there. Now, I don't think it matters, but I like to keep these in order of how they came out. So I'll start there. That way when I go to put them back, they're put back in exactly the same spot. Now, if sometimes the washer doesn't come up with the head bolt nut, just make sure that you're aware of that and you don't double washer one when you go to put it back and you're missing the washer on the other one. So this stud has decided to come out. So we will need to red Loctite that. When we take this back down, we're going to get this nut off, clean the threads up, and reuse this. Now you will notice that the 4 nuts on the far outside, front and back, are different than these nuts that are all in the middle. Okay. All right, so the head is completely loose from the jug, the base, and now we can mallet this just to get it broke free. And we should have enough room now to lift this up and get it out of the way. There are some little tabs here that have wires that come out that hold all your wiring loom up to the frame. I just went ahead and kind of bent them and got them out of the way, broke them off. There is one little one over here still left, so I'll take a mallet and tap it down out of the way so it doesn't give us any trouble when we kind of wiggle these heads out. These heads have to be kind of wiggled and maneuvered in a certain way to get them out. You gotta hold your mouth right, but they do come out. So it did take a little bit of rubber mallet persuasion for about 15 minutes, but it did come up. What was holding me up were the oil passage rubber gaskets that set up in the head on the front. You'll see them when I take this out, but I believe now we've got it out. And let's see what is revealed. Let's see if you were right on your guess of which piston was stuck, or maybe multiple. Well, it looks like I was right and wrong, if you can believe it. Cylinder 4 looks pretty decent. Cylinder 3 is a little gummy, not too bad. Cylinder 2, I would say, is definitely seized up, and cylinder 1 is as well. So I was right about 1, but 2 seems to be as well. 3, don't think so, maybe. 4 should be fine. Okay, so here's a look at our valves. Here's the bolt hole the 10mm bolt went to in the front of the motor. Here's the oil cavities where the oil gaskets and the tube set up in. That was giving me some trouble. But I want to show you. So this would be cylinder 4, 3, 2, 1. Here's cylinder 4. You can see the valves are gummed up, but no water damage. Number 3, kind of the same, just a little worse. But when you get to number 2, you can start seeing some water damage. And 1 doesn't show water damage, but a lot of oil. So remember, this bike was laying on its side on the left side. And so oil would have filled up to probably about here. And if you look closely, you can see a water ridge right here, a water ring. So water was filling up to there. Got a little bit there. But then when you get up here, water never touched those up here. So it's a good thing that we pulled the head anyway to pull these valves so we could lap them and clean up, and they would be seated really, really well. And as we were going to look at the pistons, they needed to be taken out. Make sure the rings aren't stuck as well and cleaned up. Before we start moving on anything, we need to take the cam chain and get it up out of the way where it will not bind with the lower gear. And what I will do is run a zip tie through that, just real loosely. And a zip tie through the zip tie up on this cross bar where your coils bolt in. And then that will hold our chain up, and we can hold the chain, but it still lets it move back and forth. Now I'm going to turn the crank a little and see if I can visually see any of the pistons moving just a little bit. Okay. Not sure if you can see that or not. 2 is moving. 3 is moving. 4 is moving. The only one that's solid as a rock, I was right, number 1. Number 1's moving a little, but not much. Let's try to shock them a little. The way I'm going to do that on the ones that we can see is with a rubber mallet setting on the piston that will absorb the hard shock and still give me, sit that in there, a good shock there. Be careful of your studs. Felt that break free a little bit. Moving a little better now. All right, still no luck. You know what it feels like? It almost feels like the crank shaft is somehow seized up. I don't understand why it would be. When you look down in where the cam chain is, it's clean as a whistle. There's no rust or anything in there. All right, here's what I come to question. I see all 4 cylinders or pistons moving, like trying to move, which tells me they're not stuck unless I've got, you know, a ring that's popped off in cylinder number 1. Then I got to thinking, well, what else could be holding that crankshaft? I mean, it is in neutral. We can spin the front sprocket. Starter gear is off, so that's not holding it up. But I wonder, what about this alternator here? If this alternator was seized up, which you can tell it got crispy. If it's seized up, would that stop the crank from turning? Because when the crank turns, the alternator spins and gives power back to the battery. If I take this alternator off and this thing just spins freely, I'm going to lose my mind. However, we did need to do all this anyway. Looking at those cylinders, I'm sure those rings are stuck, and I can guarantee you there would have been low compression on 2 of the 4 cylinders. So I'm glad we did this. I would hate to give one of our subscribers a bike that had low compression, especially a flat track bike. You want it to be running top. Let's take this off. I'm telling you, if that's the issue, I'm going to throw some wrenches And I'm gonna write down some cuss words. All right, the alternator is out, and now our ants come out of that everywhere. So we're gonna do a little ant delete. There we go. Ants should be gone now. Now, we don't have to worry about the bike catching on fire, because it's already been burnt to the ground. That might actually burn some of the old stuff off. Well, by George, that might have been the problem all along. Again, I'm glad we did what we did. Number one, we're going to pull the motor anyway to take the frame off and clean the motor up. Number two, we were going to check the compression anyway. I doubt it would have been good the way that it is. And we need to clean those cylinder walls up, hone those. Gosh, I bet that was the issue. This thing turns. All right, moment of truth. You kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? It was the alternator all along. It was the freaking alternator that was locked up all this time. Oh my goodness. Well, after a couple of wrenches being tossed and a couple of words being written down, the motor's not locked up anymore. Hey, you know what lesson I learned? Take the alternator off first. You know, I could tell by the way that crankshaft was clicking and sticking, and then you could see all the pistons trying to move. Kept thinking, was my cam chain wrapped up in the gear in the bottom? No, it wasn't. Looking at the starter, no, it's not hooked up. The alternator. As soon as we took that alternator off, as you could see, it spun freely. So I learned a lesson today, and I hope that you got that knowledge in your noggin now that you can take with you. We're going to make a playlist out of this video series. We're going to go from burnt to bussin'. Now, I need your help. I need your input. What color are we going to powder coat the frame? What kind of forks are we going to run on the front? How about what kind of rims? Are we going to keep the stock rims? I'd like to run maybe a 21 in the front, spoke, and then maybe something different on the back. A wider tire. What color are we going to do the tank and the metal work we're going to do? How about the seat? We're going to build that. What's that going to look like and what color? Now I'm thinking maybe a red frame with white tank and a white metal work on the back, black numbers. I think that might be pretty good. Hey, what number? I like the double-digit numbers. I prefer those. I think they fill up the space better. And just let me know. All right, bleep, bleep it, click, clack it down in the comments. Thank you so much for hanging out in the shop with me today. Hey, I'm glad we figured it out. So next video, what we're going to do, we're going to pull the motor out, get the frame, all the tabs and stuff cut off, get a game plan on the powder coat for the frame. So thanks so much for hanging out with me today. And tell your mama now I said hi.